$500 in cash. Rain-soaked hands trembling as they gripped an envelope that might as well have been a death sentence. 24-year-old Tyler Mitchell stood outside the Iron Brotherhood clubhouse, about to ask the most intimidating men in Millbrook for something impossible. Will you pretend to be my family? Just for one day? Inside, 12 leather-clad bikers who'd seen every kind of desperation looked up from their motorcycles and card games. But it wasn't the request that made the room go silent. It was what they saw in Tyler's eyes. A loneliness so deep, so raw, that even these hardened men recognized it instantly. What happened next didn't just change Tyler's life. It exposed a truth about chosen family, masculinity, and the courage it takes to ask for help. Before we dive deeper into Tyler's story, I'd like to ask something from you. If stories about real courage, unexpected kindness, and the families we choose resonate with your heart, would you take just a moment to hit that like button? And if you believe in supporting channels that share stories of hope and healing, the subscribe button is right there. Your support helps us bring more of these powerful narratives to light. Thank you for being here. The invitation sat on Tyler Mitchell's kitchen counter like an accusation. Cream-colored cardstock, embossed gold lettering, the Sterling Tech logo gleaming in the afternoon light filtering through his apartment window. You and your family are cordially invited to Sterling Tech's annual Family Day celebration. Tyler had read those words 17 times in the past 3 hours, and each time, the word family felt like a knife twisting deeper. He was 24 years old, the youngest software engineer in Sterling Tech's artificial intelligence division, pulling down a 6-figure salary that would have made his late mother proud. His co-workers called him a prodigy. His performance reviews used words like exceptional and invaluable. But none of that mattered now, standing in his empty apartment with an invitation that assumed he had someone to bring. The loneliness wasn't new. It had been his constant companion since his mother died from a stroke 2 years ago, leaving him completely alone in the world. His father had left when Tyler was young, walked out one day and never looked back. No siblings, no extended family that stayed in touch. Just Tyler and the crushing silence of an apartment that echoed with emptiness. At Sterling Tech's sprawling campus, the excitement was palpable. In the break room that morning, his coworker Jennifer had been showing everyone pictures of her family's planned activities. Brad was organizing a whole presentation about his parents' careers. Even the interns were buzzing about bringing their families to tour the facility, meet the executives, see where their children were building futures. Tyler's boss, Richard Sterling himself, had made the announcement at last week's all-hands meeting. "This isn't just another corporate event," Richard had said, his voice carrying that particular blend of authority and manufactured warmth that CEOs cultivate. "Family Day is about showcasing our culture. We're not just a tech company. We're a family company. We value roots, connections, the people who shaped us into who we are today." The applause had been thunderous. Tyler had clapped too, his hands moving mechanically while his chest constricted with familiar emptiness. Everyone had someone coming. Parents, siblings, partners, extended family. Even Marcus, the guy who'd grown up in foster care, had tracked down his former mentor to invite. But Tyler had an empty apartment, a bank account he'd rather spend on anything else, and a growing certainty that he'd spend Family Day hiding in his cubicle, pretending to work while everyone else celebrated their intact, functional families. The isolation wasn't just about lacking family. It was about being invisible. Tyler ate lunch alone every day. He worked late not because he was dedicated, but because going home to silence felt worse than staying at his desk. He'd perfected the art of appearing busy during office conversations, so people wouldn't invite him to things he'd have to decline. He'd mastered the smile that said, "I'm fine," when inside he was drowning. But Tyler's problem wasn't just about one missing day. What he didn't know yet was that his desperate request would uncover something far bigger than his own pain. Something that had been hiding in plain sight for 20 years, waiting for exactly the right moment to surface. If you've ever felt invisible in a room full of people, you know exactly what Tyler was feeling. Drop a raising hand emoji in the comments. Let's see how many of us understand this loneliness. The rain started as Tyler left his apartment building, a cold October drizzle that matched his mood perfectly. 3 miles. That's how far he'd calculated the walk to be when he'd looked it up on his phone at 2 in the morning. Unable to sleep, Googling motorcycle clubs near me like a man researching his own terrible idea. The Iron Brotherhood clubhouse sat on the industrial edge of Millbrook, where the carefully manicured corporate parks gave way to warehouses, auto shops, and the kind of businesses that didn't advertise on LinkedIn. Tyler's sneakers were soaked within the first mile. His button-down shirt clung to his shoulders. He'd worn his work clothes, not because he was coming from the office, but because he wanted to look respectable, credible, like someone whose request should be taken seriously, even if the request itself was insane. "This is the worst idea you've ever had," he muttered to himself, passing a closed convenience store. "You're going to get laughed at. Or worse." But what was worse, really? Worse than showing up to family day alone? Watching his co-workers introduce their proud families while Tyler stood in the corner nursing a cup of coffee and pretending his phone had something interesting on it? Worse than admitting to his colleagues that he didn't have anyone, that he was so fundamentally alone in the world that a corporate event celebrating family made him want to disappear? The neighborhood transformed as he walked. The apartment complexes with their clever names and resident amenities faded behind him. Chain restaurants became local diners. New construction gave way to buildings that remembered when Millbrook was a mill town, before tech companies gentrified it into something unrecognizable. Tyler had lived here 2 years and never ventured into this part of town. It felt like crossing into a different world. The Iron Brotherhood clubhouse announced itself gradually. First, the motorcycles, a row of them parked with military precision along the curb, chrome gleaming even in the gray afternoon light. Then the building itself, a converted warehouse with steel-reinforced doors and small windows set high in brick walls. The club's logo, a fierce eagle with spread wings, was painted across the front in black and silver. No sign advertising business hours. No welcoming committee. Just an intimidating presence that had occupied this corner of Millbrook for 30 years. Tyler had done his research. The Iron Brotherhood wasn't a criminal organization. No illegal activities, no violence, no territory wars. They were legitimate, a registered nonprofit, even running community programs and charity drives. But they were also fiercely private, insular, protective of their reputation. The kind of men who inspired respect and caution in equal measure. Millbrook's police left them alone. The town council didn't mess with them. And there were whispers about why they'd chosen this particular town, what had brought them here decades ago. But nobody seemed to know the full story. Now, you might be thinking this is about a naive young man making a dangerous mistake. But here's what Tyler knew that most people didn't. The Iron Brotherhood had a code. And that code was about to be tested in a way they never imagined. Tyler's hand hovered over the door, rain dripping from his fingertips onto the concrete. His heart hammered against his ribs. Everything in him screamed to turn around, go home, think of literally any other solution. But his feet stayed planted, because at some point during that long, wet walk, Tyler had made a decision. He was done pretending he didn't need anyone, even if it meant buying what he couldn't earn. He took a deep breath. Here goes everything. And knocked. The door opened, and Tyler found himself looking up at a man who'd clearly lived several lifetimes' worth of hard miles. Late 50s, maybe 60, with a weathered face that mapped decades of sun, wind, and decisions that left permanent marks. Steel gray hair pulled back in a ponytail. Eyes the color of faded denim that assessed Tyler in approximately 3 seconds and seemed to catalog everything worth knowing. He wore a leather vest over a black t-shirt, the Iron Brotherhood patch prominent on his chest. "Help you?" The man's voice was surprisingly gentle. Not welcoming, exactly, but not hostile either. Curious. My name is Tyler Mitchell." The words came out shakier than Tyler intended. "I need help with something." The man studied him for another long moment, taking in the soaked clothes, the desperate energy, the way Tyler clutched a manila envelope like it contained something precious. Then he stepped aside. "Coming out of the rain, son." The clubhouse interior was nothing like Tyler expected. He'd braced himself for something dark and threatening, all hard edges and hostile energy. Instead, he found himself in what could only be described as organized chaos. A large open space with concrete floors, high ceilings, and industrial lighting. Motorcycles in various states of repair occupied one section. A pool table sat in another corner, currently ignored. A long wooden table dominated the center of the room, scarred and sturdy, surrounded by mismatched chairs. 12 men occupied the space. Some worked on bikes, tools clanking against metal. Others sat at the table playing cards, beer bottles sweating in the afternoon warmth. A radio played classic rock at low volume. Conversation and laughter filled the air until Tyler walked in. Then, like a record scratching to a halt, everything stopped. 12 sets of eyes turned toward him. Not threatening, Tyler realized with some relief, but definitely assessing, measuring, trying to figure out what a wet, nervous young man in business casual was doing in their sanctuary. "This is Tyler Mitchell," the man who'd answered the door announced. "Says he needs help." He gestured to an empty chair near the table. "Sit down. I'm Jake Sullivan. People call me Nomad. I run this place." Tyler sat, acutely aware of how out of place he looked. The envelope felt heavy in his hands. Around him, the bikers waited with the kind of patience that comes from having seen everything at least twice. A massive man with a graying beard and arms like tree trunks leaned back in his chair, studying Tyler with frank curiosity. Another, thinner and more intense, watched from beside a partially disassembled motorcycle. A third, younger than the others, grinned like this was the most interesting thing to happen all week. "So," Nomad said, settling into the chair across from Tyler, "what kind of help are we talking about?" Tyler's carefully rehearsed speech evaporated. He planned this. He'd scripted every word during that 3-mile walk. But now, faced with 12 men who radiated a kind of authentic presence Tyler had never learned, everything felt absurd. Still, he'd come this far. "There's this event at my work. Sterling Tech. It's called Family Day." The words tumbled out faster now, propelled by momentum and fear of stopping. "Everyone brings their families. Parents, siblings, partners, anyone who matters to them. To show them around, introduce them to colleagues, do this whole celebration of connection and support." He swallowed hard. "My mother died 2 years ago. My father left when I was young, and I never heard from him again. I don't have siblings. I don't have anyone to bring." The room remained silent, but Tyler noticed several men exchange glances. Not mocking glances. Something else. Something that looked almost like recognition. "I know this sounds completely insane," Tyler continued, his voice dropping, "but I need people to pretend to be my family. Just for one day. For hours, maybe 5. Just long enough to show up, meet people, make it look like I'm not." He couldn't finish the sentence. Defective. Broken. Completely alone. He pulled out the envelope, extracting $500 in cash. His hand shook as he placed it on the table. "I know this is a ridiculous request, but I'll pay you. $500. One day. That's all I need." The silence that followed felt like it lasted an hour. Tyler watched the money sit there on the scarred wood, suddenly aware of how transactional, how pathetic this whole thing was. He tried to buy what other people got for free. Connection. Belonging. Someone who gave a damn. Remember what I said about the Brotherhood having their own secrets? Well, Tyler's request was about to bring one of them crashing to the surface. But first, they had a question for him. "Before we go further, if you think these bikers are going to laugh him out of the room, hit the like button. If you think they're going to help, leave it alone. Let's see who knows human nature better." Nomad reached across the table, but instead of taking the money, he pushed it back toward Tyler. "Sit back properly, son. You look like you're ready to bolt." Tyler hadn't realized he was perched on the edge of his chair, muscles tense for flight. He forced himself to settle back, though his heart still hammered. "Let me ask you something," Nomad said, his voice calm, measured. "Why Sterling Tech? What do you do there?" The question caught Tyler off guard. He'd expected negotiation, terms, maybe skepticism about the whole arrangement. Not genuine curiosity. "I'm a software engineer. AI division. I write code that helps machine learning algorithms process natural language." "English, college boy," the massive bearded man said, though his tone held more amusement than malice. "I teach computers to understand human speech," Tyler translated, managing a weak smile. "And you're good at it." This from the intense man by the motorcycle. "Yeah, I'm really good at it. So why does this day matter so much?" Nomad leaned forward slightly. "You got a good job, making good money, I'd guess. Why risk coming here, asking strangers for something most people would be too proud to ask for?" Tyler's throat tightened. This was harder than explaining the plan. This required honesty he'd spent years avoiding. Because everyone there has these connections. Like it's a default setting. Like having people who show up is just how life works. And I keep pretending I'm fine being the exception. But I'm not fine. His voice cracked. I feel like there's something fundamentally wrong with me. Like I'm missing some essential component that makes people worth sticking around for. The bearded man spoke up, his voice surprisingly gentle for someone his size. Kid, you're not defective. You're isolated. There's a difference. Bear's right, the intense man added. Defective means broken beyond repair. You're not that. You're just alone. And being alone doesn't mean you deserve to be. Tyler blinked rapidly, fighting the burning in his eyes. He hadn't expected kindness. Certainly not understanding. Nomad wasn't finished. Why bikers, Tyler? Why not hire actors? Someone from one of those event staffing companies. The answer came without thinking. Because actors would just be performing. And I've been performing my whole life, pretending I'm fine, that I don't need anyone, that the emptiness doesn't exist. Just once, just for one day. I wanted people to show up who felt real. Even if the relationship isn't. Even if it's paid for. At least the presence would be genuine. Something shifted in the room. Tyler couldn't name it, but he felt it, like a door opening or a wall coming down. The bikers exchanged looks, and Tyler saw something pass between them. Not pity. Something deeper. Recognition, maybe. Or memory. What Tyler didn't realize was that his words had just unlocked something in these men. Something they'd buried years ago. And Nomad was about to make a decision that would change all of their lives. Nomad stood slowly, and Tyler's stomach dropped, certain this was the rejection. Instead, Nomad extended his hand. We'll do it. Tyler stared. What? We'll do it. But you're not paying us. Nomad's voice was firm. And there's one condition. One rule you'll have to follow. Tyler's hand was halfway to the money when he froze. What rule? You spend this week with us. Not just a day. Every evening after work, you come here. You eat dinner with us. You help with our community work. You tell us the truth about your life. No performance. No masks. We prepare together for Family Day. Because if we're going to represent you, we need to know who you really are. Tyler's mind raced. This wasn't what he'd planned. A simple transaction. A few hours of performance done. Not whatever this was. I don't need therapy. I just need one day. The man called Go spoke for the first time, his voice quiet but carrying weight. Maybe, but we need to know who we're representing. Can't stand beside someone authentically if we don't know the person. But there was one condition, one rule Tyler would have to follow. And when he heard it, he almost walked away. Tyler stared at Nomad, trying to process what he'd just heard. Wait, what? You won't take the money? That's right. Nomad pushed the cash further across the table, as if the distance made his point clearer. Because what you're asking for isn't something you should have to buy. And if we take your money, that's all it'll ever be, a transaction. You pay, we perform, everyone goes home. That's not what you need. But that's exactly what I need, Tyler protested, confusion mixing with frustration. Just one day. A few hours. I'm not asking for. Bear interrupted, his massive frame leaning forward. We don't pretend, kid. That's not how we operate. If we're going to stand beside you and call ourselves your people, even for a day, it's got to mean something. Otherwise, we're just making the lie more elaborate. Tyler felt the ground shifting beneath him. This wasn't the script he prepared for. Then what are you saying? You won't help. We'll help, Nomad said firmly. But on our terms. You want Family Day to mean something? Then you spend this week with us. Not just a day. Every evening after work, starting tonight, you come here. The whole week leading up to Friday. I don't understand. Ghost spoke up from his position near the motorcycle. It's simple. You eat dinner with us. You help with our community work. You do whatever needs doing around here. And you tell us the truth about your life. No performance. No masks. No polished version of Tyler Mitchell, software engineer. Just Tyler. The real one. What? Tyler's voice came out smaller than he intended. Why does it matter? Because we need to know who we're representing, Nomad said. Can't stand beside someone authentically if we don't know the person. And if we're going to walk into your corporate world and claim to be your family, we need to understand what that means. Who you are. What shaped you. What you're actually dealing with. Tyler shook his head, panic rising. I don't need therapy. I just need one day. One event. That's it. Maybe. Ghost's voice carried a weight that made Tyler look at him directly. But we need more than that. You're asking us to claim you as one of ours. The only way we can do that with integrity is if we actually know you, even temporarily. That doesn't make sense, Tyler said. But even as the words left his mouth, he knew they did. These men were offering him exactly what he'd asked for, just not in the way he'd expected. Not a performance, but something real. And that terrified him more than any rejection would have. Wrench, who'd been silent until now, laughed, a short, sharp sound. You should see your face, college boy. You look like we just asked you to jump out of an airplane without a parachute. It feels like you did, Tyler admitted. Nomad stood, extending his hand again. So what's it going to be? You could take your money and leave. Find someone who'll give you what you asked for. Actors will play a role for a few hours. Or you can trust us enough to give you what you actually need. Your choice. Tyler looked at the $500 on the table, then at Nomad's outstretched hand, then at the faces of the men around him. Bear's gruff kindness, Ghost's quiet intensity, Wrench's irreverent grin. These men who'd spent the last 20 minutes asking him questions no one else bothered to ask, who'd seen through his request to the wound beneath it, who were offering him something he hadn't known how to ask for. Tyler had no idea what he was agreeing to, because this wasn't just about him anymore. The Brotherhood had their own reasons for this arrangement, reasons connected to a loss none of them had ever fully healed from. He reached out and shook Nomad's hand. Okay, 1 week, but I'm still confused about why you're doing this. You'll understand soon enough, Nomad said. Be back here at 6 tonight. And Tyler, don't wear the work clothes. Come as yourself. As Tyler walked toward the door, he heard Wrench mutter to Bear, You think Nomad's ready for this? Bear's response was too quiet to hear, but the tone carried uncertainty. Guess we'll find out. If you've ever had someone demand more from you than you were ready to give, drop. I feel this in the comments. Sometimes the help we need isn't the help we ask for. Tyler returned to the Iron Brotherhood clubhouse at 6:15 that evening, 15 minutes late, because he'd changed his outfit 4 times. He'd settled on jeans and a plain navy Henley, casual, but not trying too hard to fit in. His palms were sweating as he approached the door. This time, he didn't have to knock. Wrench pulled it open before Tyler's knuckles made contact. Punctuality's not your strong suit. Wrench grinned. Come on, you're just in time for the chaos. The clubhouse had transformed. The motorcycles were pushed to the perimeter, creating space. The long wooden table Tyler had seen earlier now groaned under the weight of serving dishes. Roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans, fresh bread that smelled like someone's grandmother's kitchen. But it wasn't the food that stopped Tyler in his tracks. It was the people. Women, children, families. A woman in her 50s, with silver-streaked hair and laugh lines around her eyes, was setting out plates. A teenage girl, maybe 16, was arranging napkins with the kind of dramatic size only teenagers could manage. A man about Tyler's age stood beside Ghost, their body language suggesting comfortable intimacy. 2 younger children chased each other around the table's far end, their laughter bouncing off the concrete walls. These aren't thugs, Tyler thought, stunned. These are just people. Tyler, Nomad called from the table. Come meet everyone. This is my wife, Sarah. The silver-haired woman smiled warmly. That's Emma, Bear's daughter. The teenager waved without looking up from her phone. Ghost partner Marcus. The young man nodded. And those 2 tornadoes are Wrench's nephews, visiting for the week. Tyler managed hellos, overwhelmed by the normalcy of it all. He'd expected what? More leather and motorcycles? Certainly not a family dinner that could have come from any suburban household in America. Dinner was chaotic in the best way. Plates passed, conversations overlapped, laughter erupted at random intervals. Bear teased Wrench about burning the bread. Ghost and Marcus debated whether the Phillies had any chance this season. The nephews demonstrated their limited understanding of indoor voices. And through it all, people kept asking Tyler questions. Not interrogating, just genuinely curious. So you work with computers? Sarah asked, passing him the potatoes. Artificial intelligence, specifically, Tyler said. I help develop language processing algorithms. Wrench paused mid-bite. English translation. Tyler smiled despite his nerves. I teach computers to understand human speech. When you talk to your phone and it knows what you mean, that's the kind of thing I work on. So you're telling me, Wrench said, eyes twinkling, you argue with computers for a living? And they pay you for that? The table erupted in laughter, and Tyler found himself laughing too. Pretty much, yeah. That's actually really cool, Emma said, looking up from her phone for the first time. Do you like it? The question caught Tyler off guard. I'm good at it. Emma's eyes narrowed with teenage perception. That's not what I asked. Tyler opened his mouth, then closed it. When was the last time someone had asked him that? Not whether he was successful, or making good money, or impressive, but whether he liked it. I don't know. I've never really thought about it. Maybe you should, Emma said, returning to her phone as if she hadn't just lobbed a small grenade into Tyler's carefully constructed worldview. Now, if you're waiting for the dramatic motorcycle riding scene, hold on. Because what happened next was somehow more terrifying for Tyler than any highway chase. Sarah asked him to help with the dishes. In the kitchen, a corner of the clubhouse with an industrial sink and limited counter space, Tyler found himself elbow-deep in soapy water beside Nomad's wife. She washed, he dried, and the comfortable silence stretched between them until Sarah spoke. My husband told me why you're here. Tyler tensed, waiting for judgment. Pity. Some comment about how sad his situation was. I think you're brave, Sarah said simply, scrubbing a serving dish with focused attention. Brave. Tyler almost laughed. I feel pathetic. Sarah handed him the dish, her eyes kind. Those two things aren't opposites, honey. Sometimes they're the same thing. Most people spend their whole lives avoiding what hurts, building walls, changing the subject, pretending the wounds aren't there. You walked right into yours. You asked for help. That takes more courage than most people ever manage. Tyler focused on drying the dish, not trusting his voice. Through the doorway, he could see the table, Bear's arm around Emma's shoulders as she showed him something on her phone, Wrench making the nephews laugh with an exaggerated story, Ghost and Marcus clearing plates in synchronized harmony. Family. Real, messy, present family. Thank you, Tyler managed finally, for letting me be here. You're welcome anytime, Sarah said. Family's not about blood. It's about showing up. And you showed up. As Tyler left that night, walking past the pool table and the partially disassembled motorcycles, he noticed a photograph on the wall he'd missed earlier. A younger Nomad, maybe 20 years ago, standing beside a teenage boy. The boy had Nomad's eyes, that same direct gaze, but his smile held something lighter. Happier. The way someone smiles when they haven't learned yet that the world can take people away without warning. Tyler didn't ask about it, but he would. And when he did, everything would make sense. The week unfolded in ways Tyler couldn't have predicted. Monday evening found him at Millbrook Community Food Bank, loading boxes of canned goods into a delivery truck while Bear explained the Brotherhood's monthly distribution route. 40 families, Bear grunted, hefting a box that must have weighed 60 pounds like it was nothing. We've been doing this run for 8 years. Started when Mrs. Rodriguez's husband died and she couldn't afford groceries. Mrs. Rodriguez. Tyler struggled with his own, considerably lighter box. You'll meet her in a minute. Mrs. Rodriguez turned out to be a tiny elderly woman with fierce eyes and a hug that could crack ribs. She grabbed Tyler's face between her hands. Another one of Jacob's boys. You're too skinny. You eating enough? Yes, ma'am, I eat. The Brotherhood feeds 40 families every month, she informed him, as if he might not believe it. Not because they want credit. Not because someone's watching. Because it's right. She released his face to pinch his cheek affectionately. You picked good people, me, Joe. Tyler watched as community members arrived to collect their boxes. Every single one greeted the bikers by name. With respect. With genuine affection. These supposedly intimidating men knew kids' names, asked about school projects, remembered whose grandmother was recovering from surgery. The disconnect between reputation and reality made Tyler's head spin. Most people don't know about this, Tyler said to Bear as they loaded the last truck. Bear shrugged. Most people don't need to know. We don't do it for credit. We do it because somebody has to. And we can, so we do. Tuesday brought Tyler to the garage bay, where Wrench attempted to teach him basic motorcycle maintenance. Bikes are like relationships, kid, Wrench said, adjusting a carburetor with practiced ease. You ignore the maintenance, everything falls apart. Think you can just ride and ride without paying attention to what needs fixing? Next thing you know, you're broken down on the highway, wondering what went wrong. Tyler's engineering brain wanted specifications, manuals, systematic approaches. Wrench operated on intuition and experience, explaining fixes and metaphors that made sense only after they worked. They clashed immediately. "You're thinking too much," Wrench said, watching Tyler fumble with a wrench. "There's no such thing as thinking too much. There's only insufficient data. College boy, I got news for you. Life doesn't come with a manual. Sometimes you gotta feel your way through." But then Tyler noticed an electrical problem Wrench had missed. A loose ground wire causing intermittent starting issues. He traced the circuit using pure logic, the same systematic approach that made him good at debugging code. When the bike roared to life on the first try, Wrench stared at him. "Damn, college boy's got skills." Wrench's grin was genuine, impressed. Maybe that big brain is good for something after all. It was the first time in months Tyler had felt proud of something he'd done. Not evaluated, not measured against metrics. Just proud. Wednesday afternoon, Tyler left work early to join Ghost at the Millbrook Youth Center. Ghost ran an after-school program for at-risk teenagers. Kids from difficult home situations, struggling in school, dealing with challenges that made Tyler's loneliness look simple by comparison. Tyler watched Ghost transform. The quiet, intense man became patient, present, fully engaged with every teenager who needed attention. "You were a social worker?" Tyler asked during a break. 15 years, Ghost confirmed. "Burned out hard. Joined the Brotherhood. Found a different way to do the same work." He gestured to the room, full of teenagers. "These are the ones everyone else gives up on. We don't give up." A young man, maybe 17, approached Tyler hesitantly. "Ghost said you work with computers? Like artificial intelligence?" "Yeah," Tyler said. "That's what I do." "What's it like? Being that smart, I mean." Tyler considered the question seriously. "Lonely, sometimes. When you think differently than everyone else, it's hard to connect." The teenager's face lit with recognition. "Yeah, me too. Exactly like that." In that moment, Tyler saw himself. The isolated kid who didn't fit, who thought too much, who felt like an alien in his own life. He spent the rest of the afternoon helping with homework, and when a young man solved the programming problem Tyler had explained, the kid's smile made something in Tyler's chest crack open. Thursday night arrived too quickly. Tyler found himself alone with Nomad in the garage bay, working on Nomad's personal bike, a beautiful vintage Harley that predated Tyler's birth. They worked in comfortable silence, Tyler handing tools, Nomad making adjustments with the ease of decades of practice. "You never asked about family day," Nomad said eventually, not looking up from the engine. "Details, backstory, what to say." Most people would have planned every detail by now. Tyler wiped grease from his hands. "I figured you'd tell me when it was time. You trust easily for someone who's been let down." "No," Tyler said quietly. "I just don't have much choice left. Either I trust you, or I show up alone. And I'm tired of being alone." Nomad worked in silence for another minute. Then, "You noticed the photograph. The one on the wall." Tyler's heart picked up speed. "Your son." Nomad's hand stilled on the wrench. The pause stretched so long Tyler thought he wouldn't answer. Finally, his name was Daniel. He'd be 32 now. Would be. Not his. Be. Tyler asked softly. "He died when he was 17. Car accident." The air left Tyler's lungs. Suddenly, everything made sense. The immediate agreement to help. The insistence on a real connection. The way Nomad looked at Tyler sometimes, like he was seeing someone else. Someone lost. This is where Tyler's request stopped being simple. Because Nomad hadn't agreed to help out of kindness. He'd agreed because he saw a chance at something he'd lost forever. And what Tyler didn't know yet was that Daniel's death had left a wound that 20 years hadn't healed. If you believe in second chances, for grief, for healing, for connection, hit that subscribe button. Because this story is about to show you why they matter. Nomad set down the wrench and leaned against the workbench, his weathered face suddenly looking every one of his 58 years. "You want to know why I really said yes when you walked through that door?" Tyler nodded, not trusting his voice. "Daniel hated this life," Nomad began, his voice quiet but steady, like a man who'd told this story to himself 1,000 times in the dark. "Hated the Brotherhood, hated the motorcycles, hated everything about who I was. He wanted normal. A father who wore a suit to work, who coached Little League, who fit in at parent-teacher conferences. Everything I wasn't." Tyler listened, afraid to move, afraid to break whatever spell allowed Nomad to speak. "He was smart like you. Probably smarter. Got a full ride to Penn State. Majored in accounting. We fought about it. I wanted him to take a gap year, figure out what he really wanted. He accused me of trying to trap him in this lifestyle. Told me the Brotherhood was a fantasy for men who couldn't handle the real world. Nomad's jaw tightened. Maybe he was right. What happened? Tyler asked gently. He went to college. Got his degree. Landed a job at a big firm in Philadelphia. Everything he'd wanted. And we barely spoke. Maybe 4 times in 2 years. Awkward phone calls where neither of us knew what to say. I'd ask about work. He'd give one-word answers. He'd ask about the club. I'd do the same. Like strangers making small talk. Nomad picked up the wrench again, turning it over in his hands without purpose. Christmas of his senior year. He was driving home. First time he'd agreed to visit in 8 months. It was late. He'd left Philly after work. Should have arrived around midnight. There was freezing rain. Black ice on the interstate. His car went off Interstate 80, near the Clearfield exit. He paused. They said he died instantly. I don't know if that's true, or if they just tell parents that. I'm so sorry, Tyler whispered. Our last conversation was an argument. 3 weeks before he died. He called to say he might not make it for Christmas. Big project at work. I said something about how his job was more important than family. He said at least his job appreciated him. I said maybe if he'd spent less time running from who he was, he'd understand what the Brotherhood actually meant. He said, Dad, why can't you just be normal? And I said, why can't you accept who I am? Nomad's voice cracked. Then he hung up. That was it. 20 years ago this December, and I can still hear the dial tone. Tyler felt tears on his own face, though he couldn't remember starting to cry. I never got to apologize, Nomad continued. Never got to explain that I wasn't trying to trap him. I was trying to give him roots. Never got to tell him I was proud of him, even if he chose a different path. Never got to be the father he needed instead of the father I thought I should be. He looked directly at Tyler now, 20 years later, and that hole's still there. Every single day. Is that why you agreed to help me? Tyler asked. Because I reminded you of him? No, Nomad said firmly. You're nothing like Daniel. He was angry, fighting against something. You're just trying to belong to something. Anything. He set down the wrench and straightened. When you walked in here asking for someone to stand beside you, you know what I saw? Tyler shook his head. A second chance. Not to replace Daniel. Nobody could do that. But to do for you what I never got to do for him. To show up. To be present. To prove to myself that I could be the kind of person, the kind of friend, mentor, family, that someone deserves. His voice roughened. Even if that someone isn't my son. Even if it's just for a few days. At least I could do it right this time. Tyler couldn't stop the tears now. I'm not your son. No, Nomad agreed. But you're someone who deserves to be chosen. And whoever walked away from you in your life, your father, whoever, made the worst mistake they'll ever make. Because he gripped Tyler's shoulder. You're worth showing up for. You're worth choosing. You're worth the effort of being present. You don't know me well enough to say that. I know you walked 3 miles in the rain to ask for help. I know you're willing to spend a week with strangers because you're that desperate to stop feeling invisible. I know you volunteer with kids at Go Center and make old ladies laugh at the food bank and listen when people talk instead of just waiting for your turn. Nomad's grip tightened. That's enough. That's more than enough. Tyler broke. 24 years of holding it together, of pretending he was fine, of convincing himself that being alone was just his natural state. It all cracked open. He sobbed like he hadn't since his mother's funeral, and Nomad pulled him into a hug that felt like every hug Tyler had needed for years. Strong and steady and present and real. I can't fix what her father broke, Nomad said quietly. But I can show you what he should have been. And maybe, I can finally be what Daniel needed. Even if it's 20 years too late, and with someone who isn't my son. They stood there in the garage bay surrounded by tools and motorcycles and the ghosts of absent fathers and dead sons. 2 men separated by a generation, connected by loss, finding a way to heal wounds they'd thought were permanent. In that moment, everything changed. This wasn't about a corporate event anymore. This was about 2 men, separated by a generation, connected by abandonment and loss, finding a way to heal wounds they thought were permanent. But healing isn't simple, and tomorrow would prove just how complicated it could be, because someone else had been paying attention to Tyler's life. Someone from his past who'd stayed away for years, and his timing couldn't have been worse. Friday morning arrived with the kind of nervous energy that makes time move strangely, too fast and too slow simultaneously. Tyler pulled into the Iron Brotherhood clubhouse parking lot at 7 in the morning, an hour earlier than planned, because sleep had been impossible. He'd spent the night alternating between excitement and terror, his mind spinning through every possible disaster scenario. The Brotherhood was already awake. Of course they were. Nomad stood in the main room, drinking coffee from a mug that read, "World's Okayest Dad." A gift from Daniel years ago. Tyler would learn later. Bear was polishing his boots with the kind of focused attention usually reserved for surgical procedures. Ghost sat at the table reviewing papers Tyler recognized as his company bio, reading glasses perched on his nose. Wrench was literally ironing his leather vest, which seemed physically impossible, but there it was happening. "You're early," Nomad observed, handing Tyler a cup of coffee without asking if he wanted one. "Couldn't sleep." "Neither could we," Bear admitted, inspecting his boots from another angle. "Been up since 5. Tyler looked around at the preparations, the clean motorcycles, the pressed clothes, the careful attention to detail. "Wait, all of you are coming. You think we'd let Nomad have all the fun?" Bear grinned. "Besides, one biker showing up is interesting. 8 is unforgettable. I want to see these corporate types recalculate their assumptions when they realize Tyler's family doesn't fit their spreadsheet," Wrench added, setting down the iron with satisfaction. Tyler's chest constricted with something that felt dangerously like belonging. "You really don't have to." "We know," Ghost interrupted quietly. "We want to." Sarah appeared from the back room, carrying what looked like a tackle box but turned out to be full of grooming supplies. "All right, gentlemen. Presentation check." She walked around the group like a general inspecting troops, adjusting collars, smoothing wrinkles, ensuring everyone looked presentable but authentic, as she put it. "Dad, you're literally being fussed over like you're going to prom," Emma said from the doorway, grinning at her father's discomfort as Sarah adjusted his vest. "Presentation matters, baby girl," Bear muttered, though his ears were turning red. "Oh, I'm aware. I've never seen you iron anything in your life." The nervous energy in the room needed somewhere to go, so they channeled it into logistics. Nomad spread Tyler's company bio on the table alongside a basic sketch of the Sterling Tech campus layout. "We need to keep the story simple," he said, his voice taking on the calm authority of a man who'd planned more complicated operations than this. "Stay close to truth wherever possible." They crafted the cover story with surprising efficiency. Nomad was Tyler's Uncle Jacob Sullivan, his mother's brother who'd taken Tyler under his wing after she passed away. Close enough to truth to be believable, different enough to avoid complicated questions. The motorcycle repair shop and community center were real. The Brotherhood became extended family, the people who'd helped support Tyler through his loss. "This feels like a heist movie," Tyler said, watching them coordinate details with military precision. Wrench laughed. "Except we're not stealing anything. We're reclaiming your dignity. Which, if you think about it, is way more important than money." Tyler pulled Nomad aside as the others compared notes on Sterling Tech's corporate culture. "Why are you really doing this? All of you. I told you." "No," Tyler interrupted. "I know about Daniel. I know you see this as a second chance. But this," he gestured to the group, "this is way more than I asked for. Way more than I deserve." Nomad's hand landed on Tyler's shoulder, firm and grounding. "You walked 3 miles in the rain to ask for help. Most men would rather suffer in silence forever than do that. Pride kills more people than accidents ever will. You chose vulnerability. You chose to keep trying, even when trying hurt. That deserves showing up for. But, no buts. You're worth this effort. You're worth 8 grown men taking a day off work. You're worth the planning and the preparation and the risk of looking out of place." Nomad's grip tightened slightly. "And the sooner you believe that, the sooner you'll understand what chosen family actually means." As they prepared to leave, none of them knew that Tyler's boss had done a background check on family members attending the event, or that someone from Tyler's past had seen the invitation posted on the company website, or that this simple day was about to become the most complicated thing any of them had ever done. But they were ready anyway, because that's what family does. They show up, even when they don't know what's coming. Sterling Tech's corporate campus looked like something from a future where everyone wore business casual and smiled in perfectly measured increments. Glass and steel architecture reflected the morning sun, surrounded by lawns so precisely manicured they seemed artificial. Expensive cars filled the visitor parking lot, BMWs, Mercedes, the occasional Tesla. Families in designer clothes walked beside their professionally successful children, everyone performing the choreographed dance of corporate family values. Tyler sat on his motorcycle. Wrench had insisted he ride with them, giving him a quick lesson that morning, watching families arrive. His co-worker, Jennifer, walked past with her parents, all three laughing about something. Brad appeared with his successful entrepreneur father, both carrying themselves with identical confidence. Even Marcus, who'd grown up in foster care, had his former mentor beside him, beaming with pride. For a moment, Tyler's old panic returned. What was he doing? This was insane. These people would see through the story immediately. He'd be exposed as the fraud he was, the guy so isolated he had to recruit strangers. Then he heard it. The rumble. 8 motorcycles turned the corner in perfect V formation, their engines creating a sound like controlled thunder. Heads turned. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Parents instinctively stepped closer to their children, though whether from concern or fascination wasn't clear. The bikes pulled into the parking lot with precision that would have made a drill sergeant proud. They lined up, shut off in perfect unison, and 8 bikers dismounted. Nomad led the way, his Iron Brotherhood patch prominent on his freshly pressed vest. Bear followed, massive and imposing despite his careful grooming. Ghost moved with quiet intensity. Wrench grinned like this was the best day of his life. Tyler's co-workers stared. Brad's father took an unconscious step backward. Jennifer's parents exchanged uncertain glances. Nomad walked straight to Tyler, and for everyone watching, it looked entirely natural. Family greeting family. Sorry we're a few minutes behind, nephew. Traffic on Route 80 was heavier than expected. Tyler's face split into a smile he couldn't have faked if he tried. Everything else fell away. The fear, the shame, the years of pretending he didn't need anyone. All that mattered was that they'd shown up. They'd actually shown up. Tyler. Brad's voice carried uncertainty and something that might have been jealousy. Are they with you? This is my Uncle Jacob, Tyler said, his voice stronger than it had been in years. And his business partners from the Brotherhood Community Center. The reception desk attendant approached nervously, her smile professional but strained. Mr. Mitchell, we weren't expecting quite so many guests. Nomad extended his hand, and his smile would have charmed anyone's grandmother. Jacob Sullivan, ma'am. Pleasure to meet you. My nephew mentioned it was family day, so we figured we'd bring the whole crew. We run a motorcycle repair shop and community center. Thought we could talk about mechanics, brotherhood, and our charity work with local youth. Community service? The attendant's skepticism was visible. Yes, ma'am. Nomad pulled out a business card that was surprisingly professional. Embossed logo, contact information, even a website. We do monthly food drives, youth mentorship, and crisis support services for families in need. Everything legal and licensed. We've been serving Millbrook for 30 years. Her expression softened slightly, professional courtesy winning over initial judgment. Well, I suppose that would be educational. The gymnasium is through those doors. Tyler walked through Sterling Tech's pristine lobby flanked by 8 bikers, and he'd never stood taller in his life. His co-workers whispered. Their families assessed and judged and recalculated their assumptions. But Tyler didn't care anymore. Because he wasn't alone. He wasn't invisible. He was seen, valued, chosen. The gymnasium filled quickly. Younger siblings of employees gravitated toward the motorcycles like magnets, asking questions faster than the bikers could answer. One small boy, maybe 7, approached Bear with wide eyes. Are you in a gang? Bear knelt down, bringing himself to eye level despite the effort it took for a man his size. We're in a family, little man. That's different. Gangs hurt people. Families protect them. Parents who'd initially kept their distance found themselves drawn in despite their reservations. The Brotherhood wasn't threatening. They were engaging, respectful, genuinely interested in people's questions. Wrench demonstrated basic motorcycle safety. Ghost explained the physics of two-wheel balance. Nomad talked about the history of American motorcycle culture with the ease of a college professor. For 20 glorious minutes, it was perfect. Tyler was seen, valued, present in a way he'd never experienced at Sterling Tech. The Brotherhood was proud. The event was exceeding every hope Tyler had dared to hold. But then Richard Sterling stepped to the podium, and Tyler's world tilted on its axis. For 20 minutes, it was perfect. Tyler was seen, valued, present. The Brotherhood was proud. But then Richard Sterling made an announcement that would change everything. And Tyler's past was about to collide with his present in a way none of them could have predicted. If you stand with people who show up for the forgotten and overlooked, comment, I stand for loyalty. Let's see this community's real numbers. Richard Sterling commanded attention the way successful CEOs do. Not through volume, but through the certainty that people would listen. The gymnasium quieted as he approached the microphone, his silver hair and expensive suit projecting exactly the image Sterling Tech cultivated. Tyler relaxed slightly, expecting the standard corporate speech about innovation and family values. Welcome to Sterling Tech's annual Family Day. Richard began, his voice warm and practiced. Today, we celebrate not just our technological achievements, but the families who shaped the brilliant minds making them possible. We celebrate values, integrity, connection. He paused for effect. And speaking of family values, we have a very special guest today. Tyler's stomach dropped. This wasn't on the agenda. He'd reviewed the schedule 17 times. 3 weeks ago, we brought on a new VP of Corporate Relations, Richard continued. A man whose resume speaks to excellence, but whose personal story embodies what Sterling Tech stands for. The importance of family, of reconnection, of second chances. No. Please welcome Mr. David Mitchell. The world narrowed to a tunnel. Tyler's hearing went muffled, like he was underwater. A man walked to the stage, late 40s, expensive charcoal suit tailored perfectly, salt and pepper hair styled with calculated casualness, smile practiced and empty. The same face Tyler had seen in exactly 3 photographs growing up. The face from memories so old they felt like someone else's life. Who is that? Nomad's voice came from somewhere far away. Tyler couldn't make his mouth work. His lungs had forgotten how to process air. Bear leaned close. Tyler, who is that? That's my father, Tyler whispered, each word feeling like broken glass in his throat. The temperature around him dropped 10 degrees. Tyler felt the Brotherhood's collective energy shift from celebratory to protective, their bodies unconsciously moving closer to him, forming a barrier without being obvious about it. David Mitchell spoke into a microphone with the confidence of a man who'd never questioned his right to speak. Family is everything, he said, and Tyler wanted to disappear. It's the foundation of who we are, the anchor that keeps us grounded. Which is why I'm absolutely thrilled to discover that my own son works here at Sterling Tech. The gymnasium erupted in applause. Colleagues turned to look at Tyler with new interest, with approval, with the validation he'd craved for years, but now tasted like poison. David's eyes found him in the crowd, and Tyler saw the calculation there. This wasn't about reconciliation. This was about image. I had no idea Tyler was here until I reviewed the employee roster, David continued, lies falling from his mouth with practiced ease. But what a beautiful twist of fate that we'd be reunited in this place of innovation and family values. After too many years apart, I'm grateful for this second chance to be part of my son's success. More applause. Richard Sterling beamed. Tyler's coworkers smiled, happy for him, completely unaware they were witnessing a performance, not a reunion. Breathe, Nomad said quietly, his hand firm on Tyler's shoulder. Just breathe. We're here. You're not alone. That's the guy who abandoned you. Bear's voice held barely contained anger. The one who walked out when you were young and never looked back. Tyler managed a nod, and now he wants to play proud father for the cameras. Ghost's quiet intensity had sharpened to something dangerous. The speech ended. More applause. David descended from the stage, and Tyler watched in horrified slow motion as his father walked directly toward him, arms extended, smile wide for the cameras that were definitely capturing this moment for Sterling Tech social media. Tyler, son. David's voice carried warmth he'd never shown in real life. I can't believe I found you here. What are the chances? He extended his hand for a handshake, photographers positioning themselves for the shot. The reunited father and son. The heartwarming story. The perfect corporate narrative. Tyler stared at that extended hand, 20-plus years of abandonment crystallized in a single gesture. He didn't take it. David's smile faltered slightly, but he recovered fast. His eyes moved past Tyler to Nomad and the Brotherhood, and Tyler watched his father's carefully constructed expression shift through several calculations in rapid succession. And who are these gentlemen? What happened next would become legend at Sterling Tech, because Nomad didn't just stand up for Tyler. He did something that forced David Mitchell to face every lie he'd ever told, and it started with 4 simple words. But before we get to that moment, you need to understand something about the Brotherhood's code. Rule number 1, never lie. Rule number 2, never abandon family. And David Mitchell had just violated both. Nomad's response was quiet, but it cut through the gymnasium like a blade. We're Tyler's family. The real one. David's polished smile flickered. Excuse me. Nomad stepped forward, not threatening, but unmistakably present. I said, we're his family. The people who show up. The people who stay. The people who actually know him. David laughed, but it sounded hollow. That's very touching, but I'm his father. Biology doesn't change just because. No. Tyler's voice surprised even himself. It came out stronger than he'd felt in years. You were my father. Past tense. The gymnasium had gone completely silent. Conversations died mid-sentence. Even the younger children seemed to sense something important was happening. Tyler stepped forward, years of buried words finally finding their way to the surface. You left when I was young. Mom said you needed to find yourself. She made excuses for you because that's what loving people do. They protect even the people who hurt them. Tyler, I was young myself. I wasn't ready for her. I waited for you. Tyler continued, his voice growing steadier with each word. Every birthday, every Christmas, every Father's Day, I made excuses just like Mom did. Maybe he's busy. Maybe he's traveling. Maybe he still thinks about me. Maybe he'll come back. David's expression shifted, calculation replacing the performative warmth. Richard Sterling was watching now, his smile frozen. And then one day, I stopped waiting, Tyler said, because I realized something. You didn't lose me. You didn't forget me. You made a choice. You threw me away like I didn't matter. Like I was disposable. Tyler, you don't understand the circumstances. Nomad interrupted, his voice calm, but carrying the weight of absolute authority. I was 22 when my son was born. 22. Same age Tyler is now. Young doesn't mean incapable. Young doesn't mean you get to walk away. Young means you figure it out. You make it work. You show up. David's jaw tightened. This is between me and my son. Bear stepped forward, his massive presence impossible to ignore. No, it stopped being between you two the moment you made it a public performance. The moment you used Tyler's name in your speech without his permission. The moment you decided his existence was useful for your image. Go spoke next, his quiet voice somehow louder than if he'd shouted. We know why you're here, David. We know about Sterling Tech's new Family First PR campaign. How they wanted executives who embodied their values. How you mentioned having a son in your interview. David's face went pale. Richard Sterling's expression shifted from confused to horrified. You didn't come here for Tyler, Ghost continued. You came here for your career. For your image. For the same reason you're reaching for his hand right now. Because people are watching. Because it looks good. Not because you actually care. That's not, David started, but his voice lacked conviction. Nomad moved to stand directly beside Tyler, his hand on Tyler's shoulder. Tyler asked me to pretend to be his family for one day. Pretend. Because he'd learned from you that family is performance. That showing up is about looking good, not being present. That love is something you perform when cameras are rolling. But these last 5 days, Nomad continued, his voice gentler now. I've learned something. We all have. Real family isn't performance. It's not about biology or obligation or image. It's about choosing someone. Every single day. Showing up when it's inconvenient. Being present when it's uncomfortable. Seeing someone, really seeing them, and deciding they're worth your time, your attention, your care. Tyler felt tears on his face, but didn't bother wiping them away. And Tyler. Nomad's grip on his shoulder tightened. You've been seen. By all of us. You're not invisible anymore. You never were. Your father's inability to see you was his failure, not your deficiency. The room was absolutely silent. Parents held their children closer. Employees who'd worked with Tyler for years were seeing him, really seeing him, maybe for the first time. Even the photographers had lowered their cameras. The room was silent. Parents, employees, executives, everyone watching. Because this wasn't just about Tyler and David anymore. This was about every abandoned child who grew into an abandoned adult. Every broken promise. Every person who'd ever felt unseen. And what Tyler did next would define everything. If you believe in calling out performance over presence, comment truth matters. Let's show David Mitchell what real community looks like. Tyler turned to face the crowd fully, no longer trying to hide his tears. His co-workers, their families, his boss, the executives, all watching, waiting. For years, he'd made himself small in rooms like this. Invisible. Safe. Not anymore. "My name is Tyler Mitchell," he said, his voice carrying across the gymnasium. "I'm a software engineer in the AI division. I'm good at my job. Really good." He paused. "And I want to tell you all something I've never said out loud in this building." He could feel Nomad's steady presence beside him, the Brotherhood forming a wall of support at his back. "I asked these men to pretend to be my family because I was ashamed of not having one. I thought if I could just perform normal for one day, show up with people who looked like family, acted like family, I'd finally fit in here. Finally be like everyone else." Jennifer, his co-worker, was crying. Marcus, the former foster kid, nodded like he understood completely. "But this week, I learned something about family I'd never understood." Tyler looked at Nomad, at Bear, at Ghost, at Wrench. "It's not about biology. It's not about looking right for cameras or fitting into corporate narratives. Family is the people who choose you. Every single day. Even when it's hard. Even when you're messy. Even when you don't fit the story they thought they were signing up for." He turned back to David, who stood alone on the stage, his polished exterior beginning to crack. "Dad, and I'll call you that one last time because it's the last thing you deserve from me. I forgive you." David's carefully controlled expression crumbled slightly. "Not because you deserve it," Tyler continued. "Because I deserve to stop carrying your abandonment. I deserve to stop wondering what was wrong with me that made you leave. I deserve to know that your failure was yours, not mine." His voice strengthened. "You get to live with your choices. But I don't have to live with your shame anymore. I don't have to perform for your approval or audition for your love. I'm done." He turned to Richard Sterling. "And if that makes me unsuitable for Sterling Tech's Family First campaign, I understand. But I won't pretend anymore. Not for optics. Not for anyone." Richard Sterling stood up, his expression unreadable for a moment. Then he began to clap, slowly at first, then joined by others. Not the performative applause from before, but something genuine. Something that recognized courage when they saw it. Tyler turned to Nomad, his voice breaking. "Uncle Jacob." He paused, realizing he'd used the cover story but meant it as something more. "Thank you for showing me what I was worth. Thank you for choosing me when you didn't have to." Nomad pulled him into a hug, and the Brotherhood surrounded them both. Bear's massive hand on Tyler's shoulder. Ghost's quiet nod of approval. Wrench wiping his eyes and pretending he wasn't. The gymnasium erupted in genuine applause. Not for the performance they'd expected, but for the truth they'd witnessed. Tyler's co-workers approached, not with pity, but with recognition. Jennifer hugged him. Marcus clasped his hand. Even Brad, usually so competitive, said quietly, "That took guts, man. Real guts." Richard Sterling made his way through the crowd. He approached Tyler and Nomad, his corporate polish stripped away to something more human. "Mr. Sullivan, I owe you and your family an apology. I made assumptions based on appearances, based on what fit my narrative of what family should look like. I was wrong." He turned to Tyler. "You're one of our best engineers, Tyler. That has nothing to do with who your family is or isn't. But if your family is these men." He glanced at the Brotherhood. "Then this company is incredibly lucky to have you. And we should be learning from you, not the other way around." David Mitchell stood alone near the stage, his perfect corporate narrative in ruins around him. Tyler saw him clearly now, not as the larger-than-life figure who'd haunted his childhood, but as a small man who'd chosen image over substance, performance over presence. A man who'd lost something precious and didn't even seem to realize what he'd thrown away. Tyler felt no satisfaction in his father's exposure, just a quiet, settling peace. The kind that comes when you finally put down a weight you've been carrying so long you'd forgotten it wasn't part of you. Richard Sterling pulled Tyler aside briefly. "For what it's worth, David Mitchell's position here is being reevaluated. We don't tolerate dishonesty, and his claims about family values were not aligned with reality. I didn't want to destroy his career, Tyler said quietly. I just wanted him to see me. Sometimes, Richard said gently, being seen means others have to face what they've been hiding from. That's not your fault. That's theirs. Tyler's story could have ended there. A perfect moment of triumph, healing, and justice. But life isn't that simple. Because what happened in the weeks after Family Day would prove that real change isn't a single moment. It's a series of choices. And Tyler was about to face his biggest one yet. 3 weeks after Family Day, Tyler sat in his apartment staring at an email notification. The sender, David Mitchell. Subject line, "Can we talk?" He hadn't opened it. Wasn't sure he would. His apartment looked different now. Not the physical space. That was the same. But it felt different. Less empty. Because Tyler was different. The walls that used to echo with loneliness now held photographs. Tyler and the Brotherhood at the food bank. Tyler learning to ride a motorcycle. The whole group at Friday dinner. Emma photobombing with bunny ears behind Bear's head. Work had changed too. Tyler no longer ate lunch alone in his cubicle. He'd started joining the group lunches, contributing to conversations, even occasionally initiating them. His co-workers treated him differently. Not with pity, but with respect. With recognition. Like they'd seen something real in him that day, in the gymnasium, and couldn't unsee it. And he'd started something new. A mentorship program at Sterling Tech for first-generation professionals. People who'd navigated corporate culture without guides. Who'd felt like imposters. Who'd hidden their backgrounds because they didn't fit the expected narrative. He'd named it the Brotherhood Initiative, with Nomad's permission and blessing. I know what it feels like to navigate this world without a guide, Tyler had written in the proposal. To feel like everyone else got a manual you never received. To wonder if you belong. This program is about creating the support system I wish I'd had. Richard Sterling had approved it immediately, funded it generously, made it a centerpiece of Sterling Tech's actual commitment to family values. Not the performative kind, but the real kind. Tyler still went to the clubhouse twice a week. Wednesday evenings and Friday dinners, without fail. He was learning to maintain motorcycles under Wrench's patient and occasionally exasperated tutelage. He volunteered at Ghost Youth Program. He'd become part of the food bank distribution crew. "You don't owe us your time, you know," Nomad had said one Friday night, watching Tyler help clean up after dinner. The debt, if there ever was one, has been paid. Tyler looked up from drying dishes, still his designated task, a tradition that had stuck. "I'm not here because I owe you. I'm here because I want to be. Because this," he gestured to the clubhouse, the people, the life happening around them. "This is family. Not pretend. Not performance. Real." Sarah had smiled from across the kitchen. "See? I told you he'd get it." That particular Friday night, Emma had asked the question Tyler had been avoiding. "You ever hear from your dad?" Like after everything. Tyler had paused, considering how much to share. He sent an email. "I haven't opened it. Will you?" Sarah asked gently. "Maybe. Someday. When I'm ready." Tyler set down the dish he'd been drying. "But not because I need him anymore. Not because I'm waiting for him to validate me or explain or apologize. If I open it, it'll be because I've healed enough to hear whatever he has to say without it destroying me." Ghost, who'd been listening from the doorway, spoke up. "You know why this worked? Why Nomad could help you? Why you could receive it?" Tyler shook his head. "Because you both chose healing over bitterness. Most people sit with their wounds until they turn septic. They feed their pain, nurture their grievances, let their hurt define them. Ghost's eyes were kind. You both chose differently. You chose to believe that healing was possible even when it seemed impossible. That's rare." Tyler thought about that as he sat in his apartment now, staring at the unopened email. David Mitchell's words, whatever they were, couldn't hurt him anymore. Not because he'd grown hard or indifferent, but because he'd finally learned his worth wasn't determined by his father's ability to see it. His phone buzzed. A text from Wrench. "You coming to the thing tomorrow?" Maya's nervous. Tyler smiled. The thing was another young person's event. A scholarship dinner where a 19-year-old engineering student named Maya needed family to show up. She found out about the Brotherhood through Tyler's mentorship program. And the cycle was continuing. He texted back. "Wouldn't miss it. Tell her we've got her." But the story doesn't end with Tyler's healing. Because 6 months after that first Family Day, something happened that proved the Brotherhood's impact went far beyond one isolated young man. And it all started with a knock on the clubhouse door that sounded eerily familiar. 6 months after Family Day, Tyler was under a motorcycle with Wrench, cursing quietly as oil dripped on his forehead despite the drain pan's best efforts when he heard the knock. Not the confident bang of someone who belonged, but the hesitant tap of someone hoping they'd found the right place, but afraid they hadn't. Tyler and Wrench exchanged glances. Wrench grinned. "Want to get that, or should I?" "I'll go," Tyler said, wiping his hands on a rag. Something about that knock felt familiar in a way that made his chest tight. He opened the door to find a young woman, maybe 19, standing in the late afternoon drizzle. She wore jeans and a university sweatshirt, her dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. Her hands clutched a manila envelope. Her eyes held that particular combination of desperation and determination that Tyler recognized instantly because he'd seen it in the mirror 6 months ago. "I'm looking for Jacob Sullivan," she said, her voice steady despite the slight tremor in her hands. "Someone told me he helps people." "That the Brotherhood?" She paused, uncertain. "Is this the right place?" Tyler's heart squeezed. "Yeah, this is the right place." Coming out of the rain. She stepped inside, and Tyler watched her take in the same scene he'd first encountered. Motorcycles, tools, the long wooden table. Nomad looked up from the engine he was working on, and Tyler saw recognition flash across his face. Not of this specific girl, but of the situation, the need, the courage it took to walk through that door. "I'm Tyler," he said gently. "And that's Nomad. Jacob. What's your name?" "Maya." She clutched the envelope tighter. "Maya Santos. This is going to sound crazy." "Try us," Wrench called from beneath the motorcycle he was still working on. "We specialize in crazy." Maya took a breath. "I'm a freshman at State. Engineering major. There's this scholarship dinner next week where recipients introduce their inspirations, the people who made their success possible. My mom," her voice cracked. "My mom died from cancer last year. She was my person, my everything, and my father was never in the picture. I don't have anyone to bring." Tyler's eyes met Nomad's across the room. The older man's expression was unreadable, but Tyler saw his hands still on the wrench. "One of my classmates in your mentorship program told me about you," Maya continued, looking at Tyler now. "He said if you need family, there's this motorcycle club in Millbrook. That they helped you. That may be." She trailed off, clearly realizing how absurd this sounded. Tyler moved closer, his voice gentle. "Let me guess. You thought if you could just have someone show up, just for one night, it would be enough? Even if they didn't really know you? Even if it was just for show?" Maya's eyes widened. "Yes, exactly. How did you?" "Because I stood exactly where you're standing 6 months ago. Asked the same thing. Felt the same way." Tyler gestured to the clubhouse, to Nomad, to the Brotherhood. "And these men didn't just show up for one day. They changed my life." Nomad set down his tools and walked over, his weathered face gentle. "Maya, was it?" She nodded. "I'm Nomad. And yes, we can help. But not the way you're asking." Tyler watched Maya's face fall, the same way his had, and felt an overwhelming urge to reassure her. "We don't do pretend," Nomad continued. "We do real. Which means if we're going to stand beside you at this dinner, we need to know you. The real you. Not the polished version. Not the performance. You. I don't understand." Tyler spoke up. "He's saying we want to be your family. Not for a night. Really. Starting now." Maya's eyes filled with tears. "I can't afford to pay." "Nobody's asking you to," Bear called from across the room, where he'd stopped working to listen. "Family doesn't charge admission." "But why?" Maya's voice broke. "You don't even know me." Tyler smiled. "Not yet. But we will. That's not the point." Over the next hour, Tyler watched the same transformation happen for Maya that had happened for him. Nomad asked questions, not about the event, but about her life. Ghost emerged from the back office and shared his story of loss and rebuilding. Bear talked about his daughter Emma and how family gets chosen, not just inherited. Wrench made her laugh with an increasingly absurd explanation of how carburetors were like college administrators. Complicated, temperamental, and nobody really understood how they worked. And Tyler? Tyler got to be on the other side of the door this time. He got to see what Nomad had seen in him. The courage it took to ask for help, the strength hidden in vulnerability, the worth that the person themselves couldn't yet see. The Brotherhood initiative you mentioned, Maya said to Tyler during a quiet moment. That's your program? Started it 3 months ago. We partner with Sterling Tech to provide mentorship for first-generation professionals and students navigating worlds they didn't grow up in. It helped me, Maya said. Not just the advice, but knowing I wasn't alone. That other people understood what it felt like to be the first. To not have a manual everyone else seemed born with. I know exactly what you mean, Tyler said. Which is why we're expanding. Nomad, Ghost, and I've been talking about formalizing this. Making it bigger. Nomad joined their conversation. We're calling it the Found Family Project. Partnership between the Brotherhood, Sterling Tech, and 3 other corporations so far. Support network for young adults who are navigating life without traditional family structures. Orphans, estranged from family, aged out of foster care, whatever, Ghost added. If you're doing it alone, you don't have to anymore. Maya was openly crying now. You do that. For people you don't even know. We know you now, Bear said simply. Or we will. That's what next week is for, getting to know you before the dinner. Like Tyler said, we do real, not pretend. Tyler walked Maya to the door an hour later, after she'd agreed to come to Friday dinner, after Nomad had gotten her phone number and class schedule, after Bear's wife Sarah had been called, and immediately started planning a meal that would put some meat on that girl's bones. Tyler. Maya paused at the threshold. Your classmate, the one who told me about you guys. He said the Brotherhood helped you find your family. But it's more than that, isn't it? Tyler thought about the past 6 months. The Friday dinners. The motorcycle lessons. The mentorship program that had grown from an idea to a movement. The email from his father that still sat unopened because he'd finally realized he didn't need David Mitchell's approval to know he mattered. Yeah, he said. It's more than that. They didn't just give me a family. They taught me I was always worth having one. That being alone wasn't my default setting or my destiny. That I was always enough, even when I felt like I wasn't. Maya smiled through her tears. I think I'm going to like Friday dinners. You're going to fit right in, Tyler assured her. Fair warning, though. Sarah makes you do dishes. I can handle dishes. The Brotherhood had started as 12 men, riding motorcycles and fixing bikes. Now, they were a movement. Proof that family isn't about bloodlines or traditions or performance. It's about showing up, over and over again, especially for the people everyone else forgot. 1 year after Tyler's rain-soaked walk to the Iron Brotherhood clubhouse, the space was transformed for a celebration. The Found Family Project's first anniversary gathering had drawn nearly 50 people. Mentors, mints, families biological and chosen, community members who'd witnessed the ripple effects of what had started with one desperate young man and 12 bikers who'd chosen presence over indifference. Tyler stood at the front of the clubhouse, holding the rain-stained invitation that had started everything. He'd kept it as a reminder, not of his brokenness, but of his courage. The courage to ask for help when asking felt impossible. A year ago, Tyler began, his voice steady and clear. I walked 3 miles in the rain to ask 12 strangers to pretend to be my family for 1 day. I was so broken, I thought love was something you had to buy. That connection was something you performed. That belonging was reserved for people who had their act together, and I definitely didn't. He looked at Nomad, who stood off to the side, Sarah beside him. These men taught me something different. They taught me that strength isn't about being tough or independent or never needing anyone. Real strength is about being present, about showing up, especially when it's hard. Emma, Bear's daughter, now starting her first year of college with plans to become a social worker, smiled from the crowd. Maya stood beside her. They'd become close over the past year, 2 young women learning to navigate life with the Brotherhood support. They taught me that family isn't who you're born to, Tyler continued. It's who shows up. It's who sees you at your worst and decides you're still worth their time. It's who chooses you, even when you can't figure out why you're worth choosing. He paused, looking around the room. The Found Family Project had served 93 young adults in its first year. Partnerships with 5 corporations, 12 satellite chapters in neighboring towns. 0 people turned away. Maya was now a volunteer coordinator. 2 other former mans had joined the leadership team. And most importantly, Tyler's voice grew thick with emotion. They taught me that being abandoned doesn't mean you're worthless. It means someone else failed. Not you. Never you. He turned to Nomad directly. Jacob, he paused. The cover story of Uncle Jacob had long since transformed into something more real. Dad, you told me once that I gave you a second chance at fatherhood. A chance to do for me what you never got to do for Daniel. Nomad's eyes glistened, but he didn't look away. But you gave me something bigger. You gave me proof that I was worth choosing. That my value wasn't determined by who walked away, but by who chose to stay. And that changed everything. The room was silent, except for the sound of people trying not to cry, and mostly failing. Nomad walked forward and pulled Tyler into a hug. The Brotherhood surrounded them. Bear, Ghost, Wrench, and all the others who'd become family not through blood but through choice, through presence, through showing up again and again. My son Daniel and I never got our reconciliation, Nomad said quietly. But in the silent room, everyone heard. But Tyler, Maya, and all of you, you're not replacements. You're proof that Daniel's life meant something. That loss doesn't have to be the end of love. It can be the beginning. Outside, a light rain had started to fall. Tyler could hear it pattering against the warehouse roof, and instead of feeling melancholy, he felt peace. Because he wasn't that desperate young man in the rain anymore. He was someone who'd learned his worth. Someone who'd found family. Someone who was now helping others find the same. The clubhouse was full of life, conversations, laughter, connections spanning generations and backgrounds. Tyler stood beside Nomad, watching it all unfold, and felt Nomad's hand on his shoulder. Think Daniel will be proud? Tyler asked quietly. Nomad's voice was thick with emotion. I think he's why you found us. Some things are bigger than coincidence, son. Some things are meant to be. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching their found family celebrate. Outside, the rain continued to fall. But inside, there was warmth, laughter, and the kind of belonging that comes from being chosen. Family isn't about blood. It's about showing up. It's about seeing people when they feel invisible. It's about choosing love over performance, presence over perfection. And sometimes, it's about having the courage to walk through a door and ask for help. Because on the other side of that door might be exactly what you needed. Not someone to pretend for you, but someone to show you that you are always worth showing up for. If this story meant something to you, if you've ever felt abandoned, invisible, or like you didn't fit, you're not alone. This community sees you. We see you. Subscribe if you believe in chosen family. Comment, I was seen, if this story touched you. Share this with someone who needs to know they're not alone. And remember, family isn't who shares your blood. Family is who shows up. Will you be that person for someone else? If you stand against abandonment, against people who pretend instead of showing up, against treating people as props for image, hit that subscribe button. Let's build a community that actually means it when we say family matters. Comment, I choose presence if you're with us.